All right, welcome back, everyone. Ready to jump into another deep dive? You guys sent in some really fascinating books on anxiety and stress, and today we're diving into not one, but two, both written in Arabic, which adds a whole other dimension to our exploration, don't you think?
Definitely adds a layer of complexity, and it's super interesting to see how these books, Fizo, Koyek, and Okwekano, approach these universal experiences from individual A&D societal perspectives. Like, it's not just what's going on in our heads, but also how the world around us plays a role, right?
Exactly. So let's start unpacking this. Sissoko by Dr. Kamal Valim kind of jumps right in, defining anxiety as this feeling of discomfort and fear. And you might be thinking, well, isn't some anxiety normal? And you'd be right. The book actually says that, like, a little anxiety can be good, like a motivator almost. But it's when it's too much that it becomes a problem. And here's where it gets really interesting. They found that anxiety levels actually shot up between 1991 and 1998.
And they really dig into the why behind that increase, pointing to, the growing pressures of modern life. Think about it. Technology is exploding, globalization, we're constantly connected. It's a lot to deal with. And the book highlights how these external factors can really creep into our inner world and amp up those anxious feelings.
So it's not just us, right? Like, there are actual reasons why people might be feeling more anxious these days.
Yeah.
Now, Geo doesn't just talk about anxiety generally, it breaks it down into types. They talk about objective anxiety, which is like that gut reaction to actual danger, like fight or flight if you almost walk into traffic. But then there's neurotic anxiety, and this one's more about what's happening in our minds, right?
Yeah, think of neurotic anxiety as those worries that just kind of spiral out of control, even when there's no immediate threat, that like nagging sense of unease that comes from inner conflicts, unresolved stuff, or those what-if scenarios our minds love to cook up.
And this distinction is so crucial because it shows that anxiety isn't one size fits all. It shows up in different ways, depending on where it's coming from. Understanding the root of our anxiety is kind of key to figuring out how to deal with it, right?
Absolutely. And moving on to stress. Kuikoye kind of frames it as this modern epidemic, a response to the never-ending demands of life today. But what's insightful is how the book goes beyond just defining stress. It dives into how our biology, our minds, and our social environment, they all kind of intertwine to shape our stress levels.
It's like a perfect storm.
Yeah.
Our bodies react to stress in certain ways, but then those reactions are amplified by how we think about those stressors and the societal pressures we're dealing with.
Exactly. And this leads us to a super important point, the link between stress and burnout. Sueke Concreacos describes burnout as the state of total emotional exhaustion, often triggered by like prolonged exposure to intense stress.
It's not just feeling tired, it's feeling totally drained, cynical, even detached. And the scary part is, burnout can impact our work, our relationships, even how we see ourselves.
It's true, the book doesn't sugarcoat the impact of burnout, but it does offer some hope. You see, by understanding the signs, things like, increased cynicism, feeling less accomplished, that emotional detachment, we can catch it early and maybe prevent it from taking over completely.
That's reassuring. So we've got a handle on how Anagasanye tackles anxiety and stress, but what about Aidanagesi, Agosayao? How does that come into play?
Well, this book takes a deep dive into the individual's experience within society, and it highlights how things like social structures and power dynamics can make us feel powerless and alienated. There's this one passage that really got me thinking. It talks about how, faced with these massive social forces, people often feel lost, like they're struggling to find meaning and purpose in a world that seems indifferent to their existence. It's powerful.
It's like feeling lost in a crowd, surrounded by people, but completely alone. And it seems like both books agree that this feeling of alienation, this disconnect from ourselves, from others, from meaning, it's a huge contributor to the rise of anxiety and stress.
It's wild, right?
Yeah.
We're more connected than ever with all the technology and globalization, but it's also easier to feel isolated. And that's where I think these books offer some really interesting guidance. They both emphasize the importance of finding meaning, understanding, as a way to combat that feeling of alienation.
It's about finding those things that make you feel grounded, like you're part of something bigger.
Yeah, exactly. And that's something, it can be different for everyone, right? It could be about those close relationships, finding purpose in your work, spirituality, even connecting with nature. Both books highlight the importance of actively seeking out those experiences that bring a sense of belonging, of purpose.
So it's not just about like reducing the negative, but actively cultivating the positive, the
Yeah.
stuff that gives our lives meaning. And that's where it seems like these books get really practical. They offer actual strategies for managing this stuff.
Hmm.
Like Sayoki PP Kiki Kiki Fi focuses on what it calls self-regulation techniques. Sounds kind of technical, but I bet it's not that complicated.
Not at all. It's about giving yourself the tools to manage your own, like, internal state, you know. They talk about relaxation techniques, deep breathing, meditation, even this thing called progressive muscle relaxation.
Progressive muscle relaxation. What is that?
It's where you go through your body, tensing and releasing different muscle groups. Helps alleviate physical tension, which can be a big part of anxiety.
Oh, interesting. So it's about giving people those practical tools to calm their minds and their bodies when those anxious thoughts start to take over.
Exactly. And along with relaxation, Co-Sensualis stresses the importance of time management. It argues that a lot of stress comes from feeling overwhelmed, which often comes down to, well, not managing time well.
Tell me about it. It's so easy to get bored down when you've got a million things going on.
Right. And the book gives some good advice on that front. Prioritizing tasks, breaking down big projects into smaller chunks, learning to delegate, like really practical stuff.
It's about taking control of your schedule instead of letting it control you, huh?
Totally. And that connects really well with something emphasized in Yo, actively shaping your environment, recognizing that you do have agency. You don't have to just passively accept everything life throws at you.
Ooh, I like that. So it's not just managing reactions to stress, but designing a life that minimizes those stressors in the first place.
You got it. The book really encourages readers to pinpoint those parts of their environment contributing to stress and then make conscious choices to change them.
So if your job is stressing you out, instead of complaining, maybe you look for a new one or set better boundaries in your current one. Or if you're on social media constantly comparing yourself, leading to feeling bad, maybe you curate your online experience to be more positive.
Exactly. You have more control than you think, and it's about giving yourself permission to make choices that align with your well-being.
Like taking ownership of your own happiness, right?
Exactly. And speaking of taking ownership, Sukuusua Sususura brings up this really interesting concept, cognitive reframing.
Oh yeah, I've heard of that. Like changing how you think about things.
It's basically challenging those automatic negative thoughts, those always and nevers our minds love. Cognitive reframing is about learning to identify those unhelpful beliefs and swapping them out for more balanced and realistic ones.
So you catch yourself in that negative thought spiral and consciously reframe it.
Exactly. You become your own thought coach, challenging those negative beliefs and replacing them with more positive self-talk.
That's a powerful tool. And it seems like both books, while giving individual strategies, also touch on the importance of social connection, right?
Definitely. Kaiskaya really emphasizes this cultivating genuine supportive relationships. It argues that feeling connected to others, family, friends, partners, even just a supportive community, can be a huge buffer against those feelings of isolation that contribute to anxiety and stress.
It's like they say, shared joy is doubled, shared sorrow is halved. Just knowing you've got people you can lean on makes a world of difference.
Absolutely. And that brings us to another interesting aspect from Kasaska Sakania, the role of education, specifically cooperative learning, in equipping individuals with tools to not just manage, but thrive in potentially stressful environments.
Cooperative learning, I'm not familiar with that.
It's where students work together in small groups. They learn from each other and collaborate towards shared goals.
Oh, so it's moving away from that traditional individualistic competition and embracing a more team-based approach.
Exactly. And the book makes a compelling case for how this approach can be really helpful when it comes to anxiety.
I can see that. Working together, supporting each other, learning to communicate well. Those are important skills for life, especially in today's world.
Absolutely. It's not even just about the knowledge. It's about developing those social emotional skills that are crucial for building resilience and a sense of belonging.
Yeah, it's like baking support right into the way we learn, which seems extra important when dealing with something like anxiety that can be so isolating.
Totally. And this whole emphasis on collaboration, on community, it really clicks with that bigger message from both books that we don't have to go through these struggles alone.
We're in this together, right? And asking for help, connecting with others, that's not weak. It's actually a show of strength.
Exactly. And that brings up another takeaway from these books I thought was really important, cultivating hope.
Oh, huge. It's easy to feel overwhelmed by this stuff, but remembering that it doesn't define us is so key.
It's true. Both Seiyo and Consrieo and Seiyo Setsuhyo emphasize that anxiety and stress, they're not life sentences, you know. They're experiences we can learn to understand, to cope with, and yeah, eventually overcome.
They give you a way forward, not just a label.
Exactly. A whole toolkit, really. Practical strategies, new ways of looking at things, even just a dose of hope to take control of our mental well-being.
Like they're saying, we get it, and we're here to help you through it.
Yeah, exactly. It's powerful stuff, reminding us that we aren't alone in this, and there is light at the end of the tunnel.
On that note, it seems like we've reached the end of our deep dive into these amazing books on anxiety and stress.
It's been great exploring all this with you.
Thanks for sharing your insights, helping us connect the dots between these two books.
Happy to do it.
And to everyone listening, we hope this deep dive gave you a better understanding of anxiety and stress, where they come from, both inside us and in the world around us. But most importantly, some tools and ways of thinking about them to face these challenges with more awareness, more resilience. Remember, you've got the power to shape your own well-being. Keep learning, keep exploring, and we'll catch you in our next deep dive.
Love what you're hearing? Hit that subscribe button, drop a like, and share it with others. Your support fuels the journey for more awesome content.